so many different places where there's such a tension between the Spanish-speaking people and the English-speaking people, and I live on both sides of that. You know, my father is Cuban and my mother is Irish American, and so I'm between both cultures. And a lot of kids are in that. So when I write a story, I'm thinking about a way that I can help those kids that are going through this exact same thing that I went through. And that's specifically what I'm brought in sometimes to different communities to address. I did a lot of training. I did a lot of vocal training, and I did physical training, and I studied dance, and I was an actor. So this is all part of who I am. Really, my main job is to create the story with the listener. And that doesn't just mean holding their attention. It's a two-way thing. It's not a movie. It's not a TV show. I can't see, you know, a TV show doesn't see the audience, but I see the audience. And the one thing that I believe is that if you go deeply enough into your own experience, you will touch upon something that approaches the universal. So even though my background is very unique, my father comes from Cuba, my mother is Irish American, I've lived in 4 different major cities over the last 12 years, I still believe that there are things that I've experienced that everybody experiences. We've all had a first day at school, or a first day at a job, or we've all been in love, or we've all, you know, had a broken heart, or some of these things we've all experienced, even though it's very specific. So for me, it's going and not just on the surface level of what it's like to have a new job, but to go what's underneath all of that. The main thing that I'm thinking about, though, is my mother and my grandma. My grandma, Rose Higgins, taught me how to pray. I would watch her say the rosary, this woman with gnarled fingers clutching these huge rosary beads. And I didn't quite know what she was doing, but I would watch her every night before she went to bed, kneeling by her bed. And my bedroom was right across the row from her, right across the hallway. And I called her grandma for 7 years. And every other cousin, my mom had 4 brothers and sisters, there's 15 of us cousins, called her Aunt Rose. Now, I knew that my mom was sister to Tom and Joan and Pat and Mike, and I knew that my cousins were my cousins, and I knew that my grandfather was dead, but I don't know why I called Rose grandma, and then I figured out when I was 9 that she was really my great aunt. She was the sister of my grandmother, but she treated us like her grandchildren. And so I always knew her as grandma, and I call her grandma. And grandma has been at every major event in my life. She would come to all of my shows. She would be at school and graduations. And the thing that I cherish is Holy Week, spending Holy Week with her. She would go to Mass every day. She's Catholic. She would go 8 o'clock, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then Thursday, she'd go 8 o'clock in the morning, Thursday night for a Holy Thursday, Friday for Stations of the Cross, Friday night for the Passion, Saturday, and then the Vigil Saturday night, and then Easter Sunday. And I was the only cousin of everyone that just went with her, and I only went because I wanted to be near her. She was so sweet and gentle, and we would go to Brigham's for ice cream afterwards. And so this is the thing that I loved about her. And she was married to Henry Higgins, who I called Grampy. And Henry Higgins had a bum leg, so he couldn't bend it. And he would walk around, and he was a pretty large man. And he would brag about how incredibly athletic he was. And I never believed him because he looked so incapacitated. And he says, when I was a kid, he's from Boston, I had every record in Weymouth High. I had the mile record, I had the shot put record, I had the javelin record, I could jump 8 feet in the air, and he was telling these stories, and I believed them, but I didn't believe them, because I saw what I saw, this old man whose leg didn't bend. He was a welder. He welded at General Dynamics. He built the ships. He worked in World War II. He built ships there, and the Korean War, and he was just a shipbuilder, amazing man. And I'll never forget, I was about 20 years old, and he says, Pito! He called me Pito. My father's family comes from Cuba, and they called me Papito. And he couldn't say Papito, so he called me Pito, or Pete. So I was always confused as a kid why he called me Peter, but that's what it was. He said, Pito, come here! And he gave me the sports page. And I read it, and it said, Henry Higgins, 55-year-old javelin record of 116 feet 4 inches was just broken by such and such person. And then 2 weeks later, he said, Pito, come here! Henry Higgins' mile record run of whatever the time was recently broken by whatever. And every single thing that he had told me was true. And And this young kid, he says, I hate this little, and he started swearing. I can't tell you what he said. This little, you're breaking my records. I'm going to get him. He retired before Rose retired, and I used to drive with him to pick her up and drop her off at work. She went to work very early, so we leave at 6 in the morning, drop her off at 6:30. And my brothers wanted to sleep in, but I liked to go because we'd get muffins. And so we would get muffins, and it was just me and these old men. And they would sit and they would talk about the shipyard, and they would talk about what it was like when they were younger. And I didn't really understand, and I don't really remember what they spoke about, but I loved being there. And then he would take me to the beach during the summer. He would take these amazing tomatoes that he grew and a shaker of salt, and he would bite into it like an apple and douse the thing in salt and continually eating the salted tomato until the tomato was gone. And then we would go swimming, and the water was, like he would say, invigorating, which means it was like 52 degrees, 1 degree less, and you would die of hypothermia, you know? And he was in there, and in the water, he was amazingly agile. That leg didn't affect him. I was pretty old when I learned about his leg. He was 19, so it was after he was thinking about his career as a professional sports person, and he got in a horrible car accident. And that night, he was in the hospital, and the doctor told his mother, if we don't amputate his leg, he's going to die. And she said, if I amputate his leg, he's going to die. And so they prayed, and they didn't amputate his leg. And the next morning, he lived with a leg that didn't bend at the knee anymore.